Hi guys, welcome back to Out of Office by Bridges. My name is Bella. I'm the founder of Bridges Social Club and the host of today's podcast. Super excited to have you here because we're going to talk a little bit about why I started Bridges. And for those of you who don't know, Bridges is a professional networking community in the San Francisco Bay Area dedicated to networking in fun and innovative ways. And it started based on kind of a funny story. This story is tea, I will admit. What I really want to hit home from this episode is that you need progress over perfection to accomplish anything in life. And anything that you set your mind to, progress over perfection is the key to progressing and stabilizing and actually making change. I know that it can feel very overwhelming to dive into that next project, to dive into whatever you're feeling passionate about, whatever you want to do, but it really, really doesn't have to be perfect. And I think especially as women, we get really stuck and really paralyzed with the idea of making sure everything is perfect before we, do the thing we've been wanting to do, before we invest in what we want to invest in, but also before we even start. Like, you get intimidated by perfection. And I want to share kind of like my story, one, because it's funny, but two, because I think there's a lot of amazing lessons to take away from just starting and progressing over just being perfect. And yeah, so we're going to get into that a little bit today. The other thing that I want to hit home is that what nobody tells you is community and kind of establishing your online brand and presence isn't just built from confidence. It's built based off of showing up consistently and capitalizing off of what is missing and doing that through providing value. So that is also something we're going to talk a little bit more about today as well. But okay, here's the real tea. I'm going to give you the TLDR on Bridges and how it started. So Bridges originally started actually with me and two other co-founders. And the two other co-founders that I started with were two of my good friends. And we basically were going to so many different networking opportunities in the San Francisco Bay Area, primarily in the tech and like marketing or AI adjacent spaces, because we were all kind of in those relevant fields. And we went to all these events, and there's honestly only one. I think we went to, in the period of a few months, we probably went to like 5 or 6. We were going pretty regularly. And there's only one that stood out to us that didn't completely suck. And I thought that was such a shitty experience. We were going to so many different events. We were putting ourselves out there. We were socializing. It's so exhausting. The Ubers getting there are expensive. It's like a lot to invest in those kinds of experiences, even if the events, may be free. And we were walking away. And as I said, there was only one event that we walked away and we were like, I actually took something away from this experience. Everything else felt like a waste of our time. And I know what you're going to say, no, it's not a waste of your time. You put yourself out there. True, but you don't always want to be in those rooms. There aren't always, not every room that you go into is meant for you. And I know that might be like a negative thing to say, but I think there is some truth behind it. I think it's always good to put yourself out there and meet new people and be very courageous meeting new people, but it's not always going to get you into the next room, if that makes sense. It really depends on the rooms that you are in. So anyways, we're going to all these different events. We don't find them as useful as we want them to be. And it's kind of frustrating. And so we're talking about it, whatever. And I think later, maybe within the next week, we went to one event that I said was really good. The following week, I decided to go to a networking event. This is tea. And I'm not going to name drop companies because, these companies are affiliated with my 9-to-5 and whatever, and I want to be respectful. But let's just say I was invited by another company because of the company that I work at. And I was encouraged by a coworker to go. And it seemed like a really cool event. It was, during Tech Week. And like, there's so many cool events during Tech Week. Tech Week is a really, really fun time. And I was like, you know what? I think I was like 23 at the time. I was like, I'm 23. Like, I really want to develop in my career. I think honestly, maybe I was 22. I might've been an intern at the time. It was a bit ago. And I was like, I'm just going to put myself out there. Like, this is a really big reputable company. I'm sure it'll be like a great event. And so again, this is tea. I go to this event and it was a beautiful, beautiful event. It was at one of the nicest venues I've been to in San Francisco. I loved it. It was so beautiful. Open bar, obviously, we love. And so many good bites and like appetizers, which we love. Anyways, so I go to this event. I know no one. I'm going completely by myself. My company is obviously on my chest. You can see where I came from, all that stuff. And throughout the day, there were quite a few people that approached me about my company and, whatever, which was fine. Generally speaking, primarily older men. Key point. key point that we're gonna come back to. But yeah, so I'm at this event, I'm talking with some people, I'm learning about some of these startups. It's very cool. And one thing that I did notice, there were a few times when, I wasn't really in conversation, but there weren't that many people that I really wanted to speak to, which I thought was interesting. I felt very uncomfortable. The primary demographic of the people that were there were men. Obviously, you're at a SF, tech week event, but I was a little disappointed by the experience as well, because there were a few women there, but the women that actually were there, I think I could tell that something was off. And it really seemed like instead of viewing me as like an ally, they really viewed me as competition. And that was like a weird aura that I felt from this experience. And I was a little disappointed by that, because I'm like, I feel like there should be camaraderie. When there are less women in rooms, less representation, I think you should want to come together and meet with those women. They're in the room that you're in. Why are you here? What are you doing here? What can we learn from each other? And how can we build camaraderie within, being the limited minority in this group, right? And it was very evident to me that they did not share that same mindset. It was definitely a mindset of like competition, which I thought was very interesting. And I couldn't tell if it was because maybe I'm intimidating. I've gotten that feedback before where people don't feel as comfortable to approach me. But I was really trying to put myself out there, be social and that sort of thing. So anyways, eventually I decided to leave this event because I was kind of over it. I was a little exhausted. I didn't really want more men to come up and approach me. And I was just kind of done. And none of the women would talk to me at all. They had no interest in engaging with me. And they kind of made that very clear, which again was very disappointing. So I text my boyfriend at the time, hey, I'm coming home. Just wanted to give you a heads up. And I call an Uber and I wait outside. And as I am waiting outside for my Uber, a man chases me out. And he says to me, hey, did you just come from, so-and-so's event? And I was like, yeah, I did. And I thought I dropped something on the floor or something. I'm like, why is this random man coming out and approaching me? And he was like, oh, well, yeah, I totally saw you in there. And like, we should get out of here. We should go home together. And I was like, excuse me? I was so pissed from this experience. It was completely inappropriate, or like you could kind of see like, what companies were involved and whatever. It just was not right. It was not right at all. And I was so frustrated. I obviously said no. And I was like, kind of like, get away from me. And I got in my Uber and I left. I was so pissed by this experience. On my way home, I called all of my girlfriends and I said, I'm so sick and tired of all of these stupid boys clubs. Anytime women, and at least in my experience, when they try to put themselves out there in primarily male-dominated spaces, it becomes a dating environment. And like I said, at the time, I had like a long-term boyfriend. I was not there to date. I was there to grow both personally and professionally in my career. And again, like have conversations and experiences with people that are going to get me into the next room. That was not what happened. One, because the women that were in those spaces didn't want anything to do with me, which I was surprised by. But two, it turned into a dating experience, and that wasn't what I wanted at all. But I kept thinking, like, there's so many women that I know that go into these networking experiences and do not get what they're looking for out of them. And not only is it frustrating, it's a waste of your time and resources. And when you are a professional woman, you're balancing your career, you're balancing your life, you're balancing so many different things. You don't have that much time to waste. And so I went home, I called all my girlfriends, got them aggressively in group chats. I called them individually. I was on, for the ones that lived together, I was on the phone with all of them in the living room. And I was like, I need your opinion on this right now. And one thing that's super cool is like all of my girlfriends that I have become friends with over the past, 4 years living in San Francisco, they are badass women. We always made the joke that if you look at all of the girls that I'm friends with, we could really run a company. We have a CPA from Deloitte. We have a software engineer from Meta. We have an EA at, a big startup. We have so many people across the board that offer so much value. And they're the exact woman that I was thinking of when I was thinking of who I'm creating this community for. And I called them all. And they told me I would 100% go to something like this. This is 100% something that I am looking for that I do not have, and it would be useful to me. And so that was kind of the first idea. And I knew that there were some girls that, like I mentioned, the two co-founders, that would probably be interested in setting this up with me. We we got together and we decided this is something we legitimately wanted to do and we're going to invest our time in because we saw a huge, huge gap in the market. And yeah, so that's kind of how we started. Eventually, over time, when we first started, we were a much more intimate community, meaning we really, really wanted to focus on the idea of providing value for people. But one thing that is really, really hard is when you're hosting only intimate, small experiences, the margins are very small. Not to say that money is everything, but like it's not sustainable, really. Like, for example, if you want to host like a dinner in San Francisco with like over 10 people, you're going to be minimum charging like $100 to $130 a head, like realistically. And we were having experiences like that. We weren't really seeing the turnout that we were looking for. We did get a good amount of people to apply online within our community within the first run, but it wasn't anything crazy. However, within that first month, we did have one of our co-founders drop out, which was totally fine. Life happened, all good. And then about 5 months later, my second co-founder had some life experiences and needed to redirect. So it's the beginning of January 2025, and I'm left with this community. We had maybe like 200 members at the time. And I was like, what the fuck do I do now? Like, genuinely. My two co-founders left. I don't know how I'm going to do this on my own. The element of this fundamentally that I love is that this brings people together. It creates environments and spaces that people want to be in. But like, what are we really doing here? And so I decided to post on TikTok, because what do I do when I don't know what to do with myself in my life? I post on TikTok. TikTok is my black hole. TikTok is right now the love of my life. And I spent a lot of time on TikTok. So I posted a video on TikTok. It went viral. We got about 1,000 applications in a single day, all done through Google Forms, because God help me, we had everything done manually and it was a rough process. However, because that video went viral, and for reference, it only got, I want to say, just under 60,000 views, which is not a lot. But the really cool thing about TikTok is the algorithm capitalizes very, very specifically on a niche demographic, and it hits home. So even though we were only at about 60,000 views, our engagement rate exceeded 20%. I think it was about 22, 23%. And for those of you who don't know numbers in social media, that is huge. Good quote unquote engagement is 2%. So 22 to 23% on one single post, fucking crazy, to be honest. And that was kind of when the craziness started and when Bridges kind of conceptualized and like really, really like went into implementation with, I think, what the vision was fundamentally and initially. And since then, we have tried to standardize our processes. We've built out a team. We have amazing, amazing people that do this organization with me. But I've learned a lot on the way. And the biggest thing that I have learned is that you are not capable of doing everything alone and on your own at all. And like, that is okay. And I think it was really hard for me to like internalize that, because I am kind of a perfectionist. If something is not done right, I don't want to do it at all. And maybe that's a fault of my personality that I can 100% admit. But I really, really had to, one, let go of my ego and like accepting that I couldn't do everything. And two, build out a team and systems to where I knew we could work together to be successful. Standardizing those systems and like formalizing those relationships and that kind of foundation of who we were and how we were going to show up and who does what was the key to like us even remotely stepping towards success. Getting really clear on the roles and responsibilities of who do we need to do what does a successful system look like, and how do we make this viable but also valuable for people that join this community, that join this leadership team, that want to get something out of it. Learning to ask for help was kind of like the first step of like realizing we have this demand. We have so many people. Literally, like I said, we got 1,000 applications in a single day. We had more than that, like at the end of it, when I realized the demand that there was, and I realized that I had to do something with it, but I was only one person. I realized I needed help, and I needed to pick people that I could go to for that help. And this is actually kind of funny. You guys know Alex Earl, obviously. She like popped up on social media and just completely took the world by storm with her social media engagement and all that jazz. But when she became uber famous, it was kind of overnight. I think it was after she shared her acne journeys when she like really, really took off. Her father's a very, very successful business entrepreneur. And I am always somebody that like, I believe in life, you can either learn the hard way or you can learn the smart way. And 9 times out of 10, I'm going to learn the smart way, because why do I want to knowingly suffer? That's just, I don't know, that's something that I always think about. And he said the first thing that they did when they, got kind of this demand online and the success is they built out a team. Because if you don't fundamentally have a team around you that can support you and that can allow you to be successful, you are going to be so limited down the line. So that was the first thing we did. We started to get a team, we standardized all that stuff, we put our processes in place, and that was really helpful for us getting off the ground, but also to maintaining a consistent rhythm and building a consistent cadence in terms of how we show up for our community. But we're going to go back a little bit because I want to talk about kind of like being a leader and building something like Bridges. It was something that happened, I want to say a little unexpectedly. We didn't expect to have a viral video and to kind of build this crazy demand overnight. But one thing that I feel like really differentiates us from other communities is that we are value driven and we are inclusive. And that was something that was really hit home for us and the people that I started the community with from step one. We wanted to create a space where everybody felt welcome. There wasn't that weird competitive edge between you and another woman in a room. There wasn't any sort of cat-like environment. It was like, we are here to support each other, fundamentally to respect each other. And if that is something that you do not want or cannot offer, we don't want you in the space. And I feel like that is something that really does make us unique in a lot of ways. We're very inclusive and very welcoming to all different types of people. We weren't expecting the overnight demand that kind of came, but it really forced me to legitimize. And that's like kind of a word that I have used a lot, is to standardize and legitimize. And what I mean by that is like, I'm some random girl posting on the internet trying to meet friends and like create a space where people can get value from that. How do I turn that into something legitimate? And to be honest, I didn't do that for a long time. I kept thinking to myself, like, this isn't enough. Like, yes, I'm putting hundreds of dollars into this every month. Yes, I'm putting hours upon hours of time into organizing this and thinking of all the details and doing this and doing that. But for some reason, to me, it just like wasn't legitimate. And I remember at one point in time, I was seeing a man who was like, oh yeah, how's your like little business doing? And I would think back to that in moments like this. Like for reference now, like we are a legitimate business now. We have memberships. We are an LLC. We are an actual company. But I always think back to that man being like, oh, like how's your little business doing? And now if somebody were to say that to me, I would say something around the lines of like, I would probably have a very different mentality. Nowadays, I know the numbers and I know the data that shows that we are an in-demand business. We are meeting a demand in the San Francisco Bay Area. We are selling at events. We are, experiencing high numbers in terms of our memberships. We're doing all the things. And I think that's what I needed to like prove to myself that I was enough as a leader, or that I was doing something that was actually providing value. Something that really I struggled with is like the idea of charging for a membership. I didn't want to do that, but it really wasn't fair to me to subsidize the cost for over a year. I think I like publicly said this on TikTok. I think I spent well over like $6,000 within the first year of Bridges, just making it a legitimate, quote unquote, legitimate experience for people and making sure that it was value driven. And ultimately there came a point where I was showing up for everybody around me, but I wasn't showing up for myself. And part of showing up for myself and legitimizing the experience of Bridges was making it a pay to play model. And also doing that while making it accessible for people, because accessibility, in my opinion, is really, really important. But I feel like it brings this really interesting point of what it means to be a leader, but also what it means to be a woman and a leader, and what it means to show up for yourself and show up for others. Because I think as women, we're taught to like always take care of people. And like because of that, to an extent, I think we feel indebted to people or indebted to showing up for people in a certain way. And I think, at least for myself, that's why I have such a hard time not being perfect all the time. I think like we're socialized and we have this upbringing of like always being perfect, always being considerate of others, always showing up for other people in a certain way. And that's amazing, but it doesn't always mean that you can show up for yourself. And I think what I learned through quote unquote legitimizing my business was that it was a way for me to show up for myself, but it was also a way for me to better show up for others. And eliminating this idea of like, I have to be perfect, I have to do this the right way and whatever, has really, really helped my business grow significantly. And I'm not going to talk about like numbers or like profit or anything like that right now. We are still like very much ma and pa small business and just kind of getting up and running. But like, we're a legitimate business now. Like, I did our taxes last year. We were profitable, motherfucker. Like, we did the thing, snaps. But this is just like the start, you know? And the only reason I think I was actually able to that is because I let go of the idea of what it meant to be perfect and what it meant to show up for everybody the way I think they wanted me to show up for them for. It really came down to like, it doesn't matter if nothing is quote unquote right. How do we take that next step and how do we progress forward into where we need to grow? I think like when I think to all of the like really, really successful CEOs and all these leaders in AI, they're just like vibe coding through life, you know? They're vibe coding the shit out of their, you know, Claude, and they're just taking the world by storm. And it doesn't have to be perfect. There's so many like options of like progress over perfection and like, oh, this didn't work, you know, fix itself. This didn't work, pivot. I want this, I want that. And like, we should really be viewing businesses that way now, and like opportunities and companies and, you know, progressing. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to start. And like, you will figure out a solution eventually. And I think that's also something that has really hit home, is like how to be reliant on yourself, and knowing that even if you make a decision, it doesn't necessarily matter if it's the wrong decision or the right decision. All that matters is like what you decided to do with it and how you decided to implement change. That's like the biggest learning that I think I have really, it has hit home for me, is the idea of not being perfect and knowing that at the end of the day, you're capable of figuring out whatever the fuck happened, basically. I know there's a lot of you out there who are ambitious women that are trying to do maybe your side project, your side hustle, or just have the courage to do the hobby you've always been thinking about, but you're intimidated by the experience. And I want to know, like, how do you overcome this ingrained idea that we have to be perfect all the time as women? What is something that you personally do to overcome that ideology? And how do you implement change in your life because of it? Is that something that limits you? Is it not? I'd love to hear. So thank you so much for tuning in today. If you're interested in learning more about Bridges Social Club 2, we will link our website in the show notes. But also, if you want to hear me blabber more, you should totally just come hang out with us. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Send it to a friend if you're like, oh, that was fun. Great. And yeah, thanks for being here.